Hello YouTube folks, welcome to my channel. My name is Steph and today we are going to be doing a little January 2024 reading wrap up. I just wanted to share the books I read this past month. I read 8 books and I started 2, and I'll be giving a little overview of what I thought of them. I didn't do this until this new year because I started this channel late last year and I thought it would be weird to do monthly wrap-ups when I've hardly had any months on this channel. So 2024, this is the year of monthly reading wrap-ups. Let's get into it. Here's my little snow person tea mug. The first book I read was Woman Eating by Claire Coda is the name. I have notes down here in case you're like, why is she looking down? This was a really interesting read. It's definitely a contemporary lit fic style book, but it is about this girl who is a vampire in the modern times, and not really a traditional vampire. Like there's no like spooky, evil, gothic, devilish undertone in this book. She's just this girl who tries really hard to curb her cravings for blood, and she has a weird relationship with her mother, and she just wants to be like an art student and like an artist, and you know, she's trying to like find herself and discover what she really wants in the modern world with this weird relationship with food and her weird relationship with her mother. I didn't love this book, which was kind of sad because I read a bunch of lit fic books that I really liked last year, and I thought that was like gonna be my genre of 2024. But I was a little disappointed by this book. I don't know, I felt like nothing happened. Although nothing happens in my year of rest and relaxation, and that was one of my favorite books of 2023. So I don't know. I just wasn't really into it. Oh, you know what? I think a major part of why I didn't like it is because so much of the book it's spent with the main character on social media and on the internet. And I know that's how we live our lives nowadays. I know that's like true to the, young adult experience of today. But I was a little bored of that, like to hear the YouTube videos that she was scrolling through, and like it was a little mundane. Like if I wanted to scroll on YouTube, I would just do it. I don't really want to hear about other people reading that. And it was like chapters and chapters of like, I watched a 30-minute YouTube video on how to eat a healthy Mediterranean diet, and like I understand it's kind of discussing her weird relationship with food and whatever, but I don't know, it wasn't really for me. The next book I read was Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. 2024, I'm trying to catch up on classics. That is a huge New Year's resolution, whatever, for me, is to read classic books this year. And I don't have strong feelings about Wuthering Heights. I liked the second half. I don't know. I guess I'll spoil it. It's a classic. If you haven't read it or haven't seen any of the adaptations, like, get on it, So like the first half is the first generation of Kathy and, oh god, I don't even remember his name, Heathcliff, the mean guy, and their like toxic romance and their abusive childhood. And then the second generation is like their descendants and the experience the descendants have in the same town, in the same toxic environment. I thought the first half was really insufferable. I thought it was really like I couldn't stop rolling my eyes to the point where I was like, okay, I get it. Like, can we please can something good please happen, please? But I really like the second half. Seeing Heathcliff and the way he navigated the second generation and navigated his grief of Kathy, number one. I liked that part better. I think I gave it 4 stars because the ending really, like, I was really into it. And the way I rate classic books is going to be different than how I rate like modern and contemporary books, because you just have to look at it with a different perspective. Otherwise, it's just not going to work, So Wuthering Heights, I gave 4 stars, but obviously compared to a lot of the modern books I give 4 stars, I didn't like it the same way. You know what I mean? The next book I read was Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, the second book in the Six of Crows series, the duology, right? It's just 2 books. I think I gave this 4 stars too. I definitely liked the first book better as a book overall, but I liked what happened in this book better, like specific little moments, just because things got wrapped up. I don't know, I was really, really frustrated by the end because I felt like they did a specific thing just to have some sort of catalyst for a specific character in another spin-off series, and it agitated me. I felt like it didn't service the plot, and I felt like somebody else who might have deserved the situation that another character went through, like, didn't experience it and should have. You know what I'm saying? No spoilers, but overall it felt a little discombobulated, it felt a little disjointed, and the first book I thought was much more eloquent in its delivery of, like, the flashbacks and the plot and the heist and, like, the obstacles and the curveballs and all that stuff. This book felt a little messier, and there was also a lot that was, like, about loans and financing that was involved in the heist, and it was like, I don't know none about that kind of stuff, you know what I'm saying? So I was a little less interested in this one. I think this is actually the first not 5-star Leigh Bardugo book that I've read. Crooked Kingdom. The next book I read was The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I have this really pretty Oprah edition, Oprah's book club edition, that I got at the dollar store. Let's see when it was published. 1993. Cool! This edition's from 1993, and obviously the book was written in 1970. So it's neat. Super quick read. I have a goal for Black History Month, the month of February, this current month of 2024, to read Toni Morrison's entire bibliography of novels. She's written 11 novels according to Wikipedia, and this I read in January, so I'm going to try to read her 10 other books in Black History Month. I struggle to believe I will do it, but I will try my best, and I'll probably just, whatever I don't get to, I'll read later in the year. But this book really surprised me. I can't believe I haven't read a Toni Morrison novel before. I've read, like, some of her short stories and her poetry for, like, school and stuff, but I haven't, like, actually read a full one of her novels, which is absolutely bombastic. But this book is incredibly written. She's very, how do I want to say this? Her writing style doesn't leave any secrets. It doesn't. Everything is on the table. It is so point blank. It is so righteous in its delivery, in that, like, there's nothing to see other than the truth. And it's something I really admire in writing. I really, really enjoyed this, especially considering, I mean, this book was written over 50 years ago at this point. So, like, it's really cool that something that was definitely for a different generation of readers affected me in probably my favorite way to be affected by a book that I read today, 50 years later. So this book is about this girl who is Black. The whole community and family is Black. All of Toni Morrison's work is about Black people and the Black experience. And she has a really troublesome childhood, lives with this other family while her father is in jail. And she has this huge desire to have blue eyes because she believes that true beauty only exists in white bodies, in features that white people typically have. So she's, like, desperate to have blue eyes. And it's non-chronological, and it's told from many different perspectives. It almost flips between first person and, like, omniscient, I want to say, because there are some chapters where you get, like, the story of the mother that took her in, and stories about the agricultural strangeness happening after a certain event, and then later on you find out the implications that it has for the community. It's very interesting, the style of writing. I actually, after reading it, because I didn't realize it was non-chronological until partway through the book, so there were moments where I was a little confused. So after finishing it, I, like, watched a little, like, video recap of the plot and connected the dots, and I was like, oh my god, like, it all made sense, right? So Bluest Eye, Toni Morrison, really good one. It's actually her debut novel. It was the first book she wrote, and it was really good. I really look forward to reading a lot of her other stuff. Most of her books are really short too, so You know, if you also want to take a gander into some Black literature for Black History Month, Toni Morrison would be a really great place to start. The next book I read was The Spirit Bears Its Teeth by Andrew Joseph White. This book and The Bluest Eye were my only 2 5-star reads this year. The Spirit Bears Its Teeth, oh my god, I was just like meandering in my local library. It wasn't really looking for anything, and the cover really captivated me. It's like purple and has eyeballs everywhere, and I thought it looked really interesting. And I think one of the book YouTubers I follow also recommended it, so I picked it up and I was like, I'll just like, see if I like it. I'll read it if I get bored between the other books I want to be reading. I picked this book up and I was like floored at the writing style. So of course it does tackle some really complex topics. The main character is trans and autistic, and it takes place in like, oh man, I don't even know, like pre-electricity, but not like Regency era. You know what I'm saying? So maybe like Industrial Revolution era of London or some European major country. I think it does take place in England, but it's about this character who is trans and autistic, and the world we are in has this specific gene that some people have where you have purple eyes, and people with purple eyes can like break through the veil and communicate with spirits or see spirits of like people who have passed, and spirits like attach to items as well, so like you can use these items to manipulate the spirits, and it's like this whole like overground community of people who do stuff with spirits. And men who are born with the purple eyes have all the power, right? They kind of control this society, and they are able to become, I don't remember the word for it, but like you become a certified person to communicate with spirits, because it can be dangerous if you're not trained or if you are a criminal. So people who are criminals who have purple eyes get put in like specific places, specific jails, or if you're like an outcast in the community, you get disbanded from being able to communicate with spirits, because it can be dangerous if you're a dangerous person. And women who have purple eyes are basically used to breed children with purple eyes. Like this society, people in this society who, manipulate and control the purple eye powers, who don't have purple eyes, will literally like pay families who have children with purple eyes to marry the daughter, so in hopes that their children will have purple eyes, because it's not necessarily hereditary. Like you could have no people with purple eyes in your family and then have a child with purple eyes, which is what happens to our main character. And I'm going to be using they because the person is described within the book as a woman, but feels inside that they are a man, so I'm going to just use they, right, for consistency's sake. So the main character is perceived as a woman by their parents and society, and is like supposed to be like married off to this older dude, and they dress up as a man. They impersonate another person who's supposed to be inaugurated into the Purple Eye Society. And of course they get caught and sent to like basically a reform school for girls with purple eyes, where they are very cruel. They believe that girls with purple eyes can sometimes go crazy from the powers of having the purple eyes, and they want to like reform you. They want to heal the sickness so that you can be married off and bred and whatever, to create more boys, right, with purple eyes. So this main character gets sent to that asylum, has a strange relationship with their older brother, because they're also really into medicine and surgery. Their dream is to be a surgeon. So it has a lot of body horror, pretty grotesque body horror. Even just like in mundane moments, it'll be like, I bit the inside of my cheek, and never mind, I'm not gonna say the rest. Oh, I couldn't even say it. But it's really visceral, the explanations of what the body goes through, and it's really written as though it's from the perspective of an autistic person. The author, Andrew Joseph White, is a trans man who is also autistic, so it's a very authentic retelling of that experience. So of course the autistic main character perceives body horror, but thinks of it very like medicinally, doesn't look at it and is like, ew, gross. It's like, oh, I need to fix this person. Like they're very smart and very methodical in how they approach that kind of stuff. And it's a bit of a ghost story too. It's pretty spooky, and the ending, Y'all, the ending, the way they wrap it up, it's so good. And it's a standalone fantasy book. I know Andrew Joseph White has another book. It's called like Hell Follows Us or something like that I will definitely be picking up at some point this year. But I loved this book. I think a lot of why I loved it so much is because it surprised me. But if you like body horror, if you like authentic stories about the trans experience and the autistic experience, if you like fantasy standalones, really dark, like a genuinely gothic, not like there's like it's almost like clickbait with these books nowadays. The back of the book synopses are like gothic enemies to lovers story and they're not. This is actually a gothic story. It does have a cute little romance in it. Just so well written. It's like that movie Little Princess. I don't know if anyone in the whole world knows that movie, but Little Princess, if it was absolutely 10 times scarier and written by somebody of today's modern society. Okay, I talked about that book for way too long. But the next book that I read this month was The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. And I did a book rant about this book because I had some extremely strong feelings about this book after I finished it. Here, I'll show you. This is also like a book I got at Goodwill. That is like an old edition. I think it's from, let me see, 1995. This edition is the Barnes & Noble Classics from 1995. Obviously, this book was written, I think it was written in 1890. Y'all know what this is about. This boy, Dorian Gray, gets a painting done of him, gets his heart broken by an actress, and is influenced by hedonistic men around him to become hedonistic himself. The painting gets all of the physical and soul-based repercussions, and he does not. He lives the rest of his life beautiful, and then he has a very tragic ending. I have some strong feelings about this. I definitely recommend watching my book rant video about this because it's not that I disliked this book. It's just that what I thought was going to be a gothic romance, horror, old-timey story kind of book ended up being something not that. It's not that. I feel like I read a different book than the book that everybody else reads because I walked away from this seeing a very different picture than what a lot of people paint this book to be. The next book I read was Women Who Run with the Wolves by, I don't want to get this name wrong, Clarissa Pinkola Estes. It's a super duper short read. I think I listened to the audiobook and it was like 4 hours, so really quick. I enjoyed it. I felt like it could have been a lot more in depth. It's just like a retelling of a couple of like folk tales and also historical women who were kind of wild, right? They were very in tune with nature, very in tune with their animalistic side, and were not interested in like social norms and stuff like that. While I did enjoy the contents of this book, I did not enjoy the length and I did not enjoy the lack of depth. Like I finished this book and I was like, I wish this was a whole textbook. Like, I want a whole textbook because there were so many cultures that this author did not hit. There were so many stories that were not discussed. There was lots of old-timey stories and not a lot of new-timey stories, and I just felt like it could have been so much more than it was. So that was my biggest gripe with this book. I did enjoy it. I don't know. It was kind of one of those books that's hard to have an opinion on because it didn't feel done. Like, it felt like it needed to continue. So how can I have an opinion on something since it's not even complete? It was a bit of a letdown because I wanted more. And I know this book is really hyped up by, like, the feminist community. And, of course, I appreciated the stories and the knowledge that was granted by this book and this author's collection of wild women's stories. But I wanted a textbook. I wanted a textbook. I wanted a seminar. I wanted a semester-long class of the contents that was in this book versus a teeny tiny little 3.5-hour audiobook. The last book I read this month was As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zulfa Kato. Oh God, I hope I'm saying that right. This book is incredible. It's very timely. It's long and it covers some really scary and difficult topics. So please read trigger warnings and please educate yourselves on the current international world affairs before you read this book so you can go into it with the correct mindset. It's about this woman who is living during the Syrian Revolution, I think in like the 1980s or something, and she wanted to go to college to be a pharmacist, but ends up helping at the local hospital to help heal civilians who have been hurt by the government bombing and attacks, the Syrian protesters and revolutionaries and such. And she has her sister-in-law living at home who is pregnant, Layla, and her name is Salama. Haha, I remember names. Woo-hoo. And she doesn't want to leave Syria. She wants to stay and help people because she works in the hospital, right? So she's saving lives, even though that wasn't the trajectory of life that she wanted. Of course, war and times like that make people do things that they wouldn't necessarily do in order to survive and help their community survive, right? Her home was bombed, and her mother had passed in that bombing, and when the bomb happened, Salama hit the back of her head, and since she hit the back of her head, she started hallucinating this white man who comes to her in the night, and like he makes her relive memories she doesn't want to relive, and he makes her hallucinate. His thing is that he's like, you have to leave Syria. I will do anything. I will show you any scary memory or any scary vision in order to convince you to leave Syria. And obviously she's conflicted because she promised her brother, who is being held captive by the Syrian government, who is married to Layla at home, who's pregnant, right? That's their kid. She promised him she would keep Layla safe. She's the conflict of her brother and the guy she's hallucinating, telling her to leave Syria to protect Layla and also save herself, and the internal conflict to save her people, to save her community, and stay true to her country. So that's the main conflict. There's a little love story involved. There's a lot of discussion of the experience of being in Syria during wartime. A lot of moments of her, trying to save lives and sometimes failing and sometimes succeeding. And just the internal conflict of what is a better way to save your country? Is it to leave and survive so you can come back and continue the legacy of your country? Or is it to stay and fight and save lives? That's kind of the main plot. There's also, I will say, in kind of the middle of the book, it becomes a little mundane because it's just like her day in, day out. You kind of see the same thing over and over again. The plot isn't terribly invigorating, but if you like stories where a lot of what's going on is on the inside and you see a lot of emotional confliction and quarries, I would recommend this book. Again, please read any trigger warnings. Please educate yourself about what's going on today in the Middle East. But I would definitely recommend this book. The author is also Syrian, so she's younger. I don't think she actually lived during the real Syrian Revolution. This is a very authentic retelling, again, just like Spirit Bears Its Teeth. A lot of what happens in the book is also based on real events. It's fiction, but there's an author's note at the end of the book that was discussing so I talked about this one specific protest that ended with this specific thing, and I put it in my book, but please note, blah, 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 blah. So that was the last book that I finished in January, and that was another 5-star read. I was wrong. So Bluest Eye, Spirit Bears Its Teeth, and As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow were my 3 5-star books. The rest of them were 2 or 3 or 4 stars. But those are the books that I finished this past month, January. I did start 2 that I haven't finished. One of them is The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. And I'm halfway done. I'm not loving it. The Once and Future Witches was my favorite read, my top book of 2022. It's kind of written like The Alchemist or something like that, where it's half of the narration is textbook. It's like reading a textbook. So this person's and then I discovered that blah blah blah, and then you should know that blah blah blah, and I don't like that half of the book. But I do like the half that's like the narration story of the girl, January, and how she discovers the 10,000 doors. I'm not going to give like my final opinion or like a plot overview right now just because I haven't finished it, right? So I haven't quite figured out what it's actually about, of course. But I did start that book in January. I will probably finish it by the end of this week. Or DNF it. Ooh, I don't know. I'm hoping I don't because I really want to give it a chance. And I know a lot of people really love this book. And the next book, the last book that I'm going to be talking about today, I've literally read like 50 pages. Yeah, like 46 pages. So I hardly know what it's about yet. But The House with the Golden Door by Elodie Harper is the next book that I'm reading right now. I read The Wolf Den last year. It's right there. Whoop. On my shelf. Loved it. No, I read it in 2022, I think. I read it then. Loved that book. I didn't even know it was a trilogy too, and the third book just came out in 2023. So I was like, I have to pick up the second book. But the first book was it takes place in Pompeii, and it's about this girl who was wealthy in like Greece or something, and when her town got conquered and colonized, she was taken in as a slave to Pompeii, and then she serves in a brothel, and she obviously hates it, and because she's smart and has an education from being raised rich, unlike the other women in the brothel, she's able to figure out a way, or she tries to figure out a way to escape the brothel and make a better life for herself. And this second book is about how that better life is going and if it's actually better. Supposedly House of the Golden Door. That is the other book that I started in January. Haven't finished yet. That finishes up my January 2024 reading wrap up. I read 8 books, didn't finish them, but I wanted to include them, because technically I read a little bit of them in January. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you read in January down in the comments. Let me know what you think about those books that I did read, and I'm excited to embark on my little Toni Morrison bibliography journey for Black History Month in February. Have a great rest of your day. From me and Snow Person Mug. Bye.